like to have fun, but because in the lineage of Jesus, which is in the book of Matthew, and that's that part where everyone says, what is this? Where it says this one begat that one, and then that one begat the other one, and the other one begat someone else. She's listed there along with Bathsheba and Ruth and another woman. Anyway, the reason that she's mentioned is because of the lineage, to follow the lineage that eventually gave birth to Jesus of Nazareth through Mary and Joseph. And the lineage is very important because it shows the direct line of heritage from Jesus to King David, which meant that he was royalty. He was entitled to be known as the King of the Jews, or the royal child of God. And of course, once we realize that we are related to this spiritual awareness in spirit, then that makes us heirs to the kingdom as well. And not only did Jesus awaken to this awareness that God's presence dwelt mightily in the midst of him, and that was on the spiritual level, but it was also on the earthly level too. It's proven any way you look at it. And I like that. I think that's really beautiful. And that's why I'm sure some monk said, as they were copying the Bible on the parchment and with the ink, handwriting it, he said, why do I have to do this one about this one together? Because it shows the direct lineage. So then, of course, there was the priest next to him, and he said he was working on the manuscript, and he said, I'm going to go down to the archives and look up this. And he came back, and he was just ashen white. And they said, what's the matter? He said, well, I looked up the word, and it's not celibate, it's celebrate. So then, with Rahab, she was open to the possibilities that were all around her. And this probably made her a successful businesswoman on many levels. And also saved her and her family and provided a future for her where somehow she was involved in relationships with royalty that helped, through her lineage, her contribution to the lineage led to the results that Jesus was born and it had royal blood. So there's very interesting things to see there. While she had a bad reputation, and it gives her the distinction of being a bad girl, she was alert to the possibilities. And so the ingredients of the story come from both Joshua and Rahab, to be listening to God's guidance within, and to be true to your source and your roots and your claim, and to be alert to the possibilities that are always going on around you, and to not let things happen especially, but to make things happen. And of course then you get to this let go and let God. That would be let go and make God, but let God make the possibilities that are emerging from any situation into a reality. So as she lived her life, and she was rescued because of her kindness to others and her alertness to what the possibilities would be, she lived a very wonderful life, and she was able to change her reputation. And reputation is like esteem. Our esteem is the reputation we have with ourselves and others, because it shows up with others. It spills over from us. And because she had this new reputation, she had new esteem, and people saw her differently. And maybe somewhere along the line on the road to Jericho, which is also the road that the Good Samaritan took, and Jesus was on that road a number of times, but if someone came and said, that woman over there, she looks like a hussy that used to run this tavern and she danced on the tables, and they, oh, not Rahab. No, not anymore. And it also, the story also inspires us to know that if maybe we had some times when we weren't on our best behavior, we were distracted by maybe a pain in our family or in our body or in our finances or a fear that we had, and we just weren't as centered enough to be nice and kind and lovely and sweet. I mean, I don't know anything about that. I've never been there. That we could overcome that with ourselves and with others by upgrading our awareness, being saved for and following our guidance and being open and receptive and making the most of everything that happens instead of just letting it happen and watch it go by. So that's Rahab. Now the next bad girl I want to tell you about is Delilah. Now Delilah and Samson were an item. And Samson had killed a lion and had lots of witnesses. He was a fierce warrior, a Hebrew hero. He was big and strong, and he was beautiful, and he had hair. More hair than you've ever seen on any man. And it was big, big hair. And he thought that his strength came from his hair. And Delilah was breathtakingly beautiful. She looked just like Hedy Lamarr. And just a little side note here. I met Samson and Delilah in the dark while I was sitting next to my grandmother in a movie theater in Carrizo Springs, Texas. And I had never seen as beautiful a man and as beautiful a woman intimately attracted to each other and kissing each other. My parents kissed, and I kissed my grandmother. We all kissed everybody, but nobody kissed like that. And I'm thinking that I was, is it hot in here or is it just me? And then I realized it didn't matter because it was dark and no one could see. So even my grandmother, I had this rush of, oh, that's what this is all about going on. And I felt embarrassed, but then she didn't know what was going on with me, I realized. So, but in the movie, it was Hedy Lamarr who played Delilah, and she was really breathtaking. And just for these little things, if you needed to know, one of her costumes was all peacock feathers. And years later, that costume was purchased by Debbie Reynolds for a museum that she was hoping to open, and probably that'll happen someday. And Edith Head did the costume. And also, Hedy Lamarr was a brilliant scientist, and she created a device that helped win the Second World War. So there was brains behind all that beauty. So I didn't know anything about that, and I didn't really care. I just saw these two people, and I said, wow. And so, but everybody else thought so too, because here was Samson, and they feared him. These were the Philistines, and they were frightened of him because he was so strong, and then his strength rippled back to all the men that were fighting with him. If Samson can do it, we can do it. And so Samson and Delilah got together, and she weakened his strength. And part of he was a Nazarite, and that was a sect of Judaism where the individual was christened at birth, not christened, but named at birth to be in this particular sect. And he was not to ever cut his hair or taste wine. But I think that Delilah got him a little intoxicated. It wasn't hard to do since he'd never had wine before, just a little sip and he was gone. And then she took advantage of it. And when she took it, then the Philistines, they said, hey, Delilah, if you can find out what his strength is and we can take it away from him, then we won't have him to fear, and we'll go on our lives without the Hebrews taking over. So she got him intoxicated. She no telling what else she did to him, poor boy. And she, and then she asked him what is the secret of your strength. And he said, well, if you were to take wine vines and weave them through my hair, that would take away my strength. So when he had passed out, exhausted from all their activity, she wove vines through his hair. And then when he awakened, he went, what is this in my hair? And he hadn't lost any strength. So on another occasion, and here are these men who were going to give her 11,000 pieces of silver. And there were 5 of them that were going to contribute. This was a lot of money. She could retire and move to Jerusalem. And so the second time he said, well, if you take new rope. So she tied his hair with new rope, and he awakened and, it didn't work. And then he said, well, if you were to either weave my hair into a web or weave my hair, another Bible version of it says weave my hair into a loom. And so he awakened from that. And finally, after their relationship went on, and he was weakened by her passion and hidden talent, he told her, it's in my hair. So while he slept and passed out or slept on her lap, a servant came in and cut off his hair. And when he awakened, he was limp and weak and not big and strong. And then the Philistines came in and they took him, they hurt him, they beat him because he couldn't defend himself. He was so weak. And then they blinded him. And this was really very sad, to take away his sight. And then they put him in bronze shackles and put him in prison. But the prison had a public viewing area where he was forced to grind the wheat in a big, huge millstone that went around in a circle. And this was very degrading, and it was very upsetting for all of the Hebrew people who had just loved this man. He had been their hero, and now he was reduced. He was still had the muscles, but he just had no strength, and he was blind, and he didn't have any hair, And they were really very sad about this, and they felt defeated. And so as he ground the millstone, he noticed he had time, and he had to think, and he couldn't see, so he had to look within. And as he looked within and pushed this, he noticed that his hair started to grow back, not in huge long amounts, but it was, and he thought, my strength is coming back. And then he thought, no, my strength, because I was dedicated to God, that and his name, Samson, means, the metaphysical interpretation is dedicated to God. He said, he thought to himself, I've been dedicated to God all my life. I did all the things I was supposed to do. My hair grew, I didn't taste any wine, but I let someone rob me of my centeredness, of my agreement that I had made with God, and I got distracted. I lost sight of what I was about and where I was going and what I was here to do, and then I became blinded as a result. But I have inner sight, and I can see the strength of God within, and I can still do what I am called to do, even though those outer things do not have the effect or can't work anymore. So as he continued grinding the mill wheel, he gained in strength. Then they had the feast of the Dagon. the Feast of the Dagon, and that was the Dagon god, and it was their Philistine, one of their gods. And this was to be held in the courtyard of the temple, and thousands of people came. And the temple was a huge, big stone building, an arena, and all the high priests and those 5 men that had bribed Delilah, and all the officials, everybody important was there, and they were up on the terrace in like dress circle, where everybody would be watching, and they had the best seats. And they brought in all kinds of acrobats and jugglers and Miss everybody that was there, and put on a show, a lavish show, in praise of the god Dagon. But the main event was to bring in Samson. And of course, everybody was just really delighted to see their enemy weakened and in bronze chains and led around by some real weakling little person who made him, here was this hulk of a man, had been, and here almost a childlike person is bringing him in. And the crowd just went wild. They were just so thrilled to see their enemy just in chains. And so during this time, they beat him. They probably threw tomatoes and food at him and a cushion or two, and pointed and laughed. And of course, when he didn't know where he was, couldn't see anything. But he asked his caregiver to take him up between the pillars of the temple. And he had been there, and everyone knew how this was structurally put together. And he had probably touched those pillars before and just been amazed at the structure and the architecture and the people that had built it for the city. And so he got up to the pillars, and he could put his hands on them and feel where they were. And he probably felt the sun on his face and could hear all this jeering and laughter and people going, oh, he thinks he's going to do something, stupendous here. But he asked God to help him. He said, God, give me strength. And then he put his hands on the pillars, and he was so strong, and he only had to move them just a little bit. And then that caused a domino effect in the temple, and everyone in it came tumbling down. And many of these people died and perished and were crushed and died in the panic of people trampling each other to get away. And the whole thing came down. And it was his biggest victory for the Hebrews over the Philistines of all time. So it was a huge success. And it took his life. But because he had gained the insight and located his strength as coming from within, then that was the awakening that led him on. Now, when it's time for us to leave, I think the page is turned and we continue where we left off. So if a soul that's been in service, that's been doing their best, that's been learning and growing and caring positively for others, and their numbers up, then I think they get to evolve into that kind of activity, that mode, that lovely, caring part, and continue doing what they have been doing here. So I think that for Samson, he just continued going on to more and more victories. Then one of the things to ask is, what happened to Delilah? Well, Samson's name also means, besides dedicated to God, it means also sun, as in daylight, sun. And he was the light, and he was brilliant. He lit up a room when he walked into it. And Delilah's name means the one who helps lose focus or who interrupts. And her name also means night. She was a lady of the night. And she's darkness. And here's a classic story of opposites attracting, day and night. And she had the power to weaken, is what her name means. And so there's two published versions. The Bible does not say what happened to her. The opera, Samson et Delilah, is French, and it's a beautiful opera, and with Egyptian and costuming and stuff like that, although it didn't happen in Egypt, but it's still veils and bangles and beauty. And in that opera, Delilah comes to Samson and makes fun of him while he's grinding the wheat in the prison. But in the movie, Delilah comes to him and is in the shadows behind the pillars, and she says, "I'm sorry," and she is crushed too. I hope she had a good estate planner for all those 11,000 pieces of silver for her heirs. But anyway, I like to think that she came around, and instead of being one who weakens, she learned from her mistakes. And I think probably she had some love feelings and some passion for this man. But then the greed came in, so these are fabulous stories that help us manage our own understanding, and we can profit by someone else's mistake and learn from their mistakes so that our life is enhanced with knowledge that results in good. Both of these stories talk about something that I highlighted on once before here, and that is the locus of control. And the locus of control is a psychological term meaning the location of control. And where is your locus of control? Your locus of control, we all have this in common with each other. That's what makes us a family, and that's what makes us come home to our spiritual home. Our locus of control, our location of control is within. And there's an inner, so we have an inner location of control, and then there are outer locations of control, like your hair. I can't go to the party and have a really good time with my friends because I can't do anything. I just wash my hair and I can't do anything with it. I knew a woman one time and she said, "Oh, I have bad hair." And she did. And she said, "The reason I have bad hair is when I was like 16, my mother took me to a beauty shop and the woman there said, 'You have bad hair.' And so she said, an expert, a hairdresser, told me I had bad hair, and so I have bad hair." And I think, well, what would happen if you changed your story? You know, if you could forget that. Have some milk of amnesia. And don't, just let it go. You know, make another decision instead of letting it go on and on. Make another decision to tell yourself something else. Because the woman had authority, a hairdresser, she thought, well, whatever they say, you know, what stories do you and I have? Because someone said so, or said that about that incident, or those ingredients, or that path. Who knows? And it's in our prayer time, and in our reflecting time, and in our looking at others to say, I would like to be more like that, or there's someone that is showing me behavior that I do not want to model. I'll bless them, I'll thank them for reminding me how ugly that is, and I'll bless them on their way and ask God to comfort them and especially those around them as they travel on. So that when we're in our thinking, observing, deciding times, we might ask, what are some beliefs that I have that don't serve me, that I need to see differently? And we could also say, like Samson did, what are my blind sights, my blind spots, that if I could remove, I would have more vision, a brighter vision. And we could also say that these blind spots, I need to know what they are. I would like to know what I'm missing, giving to, because I don't know that it's there. So instead of being one who weakens by taking away the power, we need to know that by going within and listening to God's guidance and presence, realizing that we're the chosen one in this situation that we call our life, and knowing that we have an inner locus of control, not an outer locus, like if the weather or what they say or what's on the news, or what the trend is or what the weather is. But we have an inner locus of control. Then here's what we can do. We can penetrate any walls. They will come tumbling down. And on the tumble, we can climb up to see what is next for us to learn, enjoy, celebrate. Then we can also see through the blind spots, have inner sight. See, he lost his vision, so he had to develop insight. And maybe because he was so big and strong and a fearless fighter and killing lions and subduing beautiful women, he didn't have time for the quiet time. And I oftentimes will be working with a family and a member is lingering, and they may linger hours or weeks or years. And I tell these families I work with that they're putting some pieces together that they couldn't put together when they were attending PTAs and baking cookies and raising kids and driving to piano lessons. And that now their soul is putting all this together to get ready to go. And you could save yourself one of those kinds of incidents. So by looking at all the possibilities that are right in front of you, that we can all celebrate and enjoy right now. And so we can know then that no wall can hold us back. We can scale or make it crumble down. And that we can, even though we may be in a situation and we cannot see how this can be resolved, what good can come from this, where the happy ending is, we can go within, and God's presence within us will give us the strength and the vision to pursue and overcome with a great success all of our challenges. And like Samson, it killed him, and it'll kill you too. And then the part of you that is eternal and aware will rise, as we celebrated Easter, will rise up and be all fresh and ready to go forward and expand and be that special creation that you are. Let's bow our heads and close our eyes. Father, for this time together, we are thankful. We give thanks for these individuals who really lived, and we bless them on their way. We give thanks for the things that they represent in all humankind, and we give thanks for those qualities, the good ones and the ones that are not so good. And we ask that as we examine these lives and are reminded of these stories, that we come to a place, Father, where we feel your presence within us, and we invite you to speak loudly through us, to move gently and with strength through us, so that we can climb any wall or make it fall apart, and that we can see through our blind spots and have the vision that you have of us, for helping us understand these principles, for helping us awaken to them and be reminded of them, and then so that we can put them to work in our lives. Father, for all of this, we give thanks in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Hammons. That was inspirational, as usual. And I was so awestruck by our speaker that I skipped over our double heart trio, so I would like to call up the double heart trio.